Passing a job interview is one of the hardest and most stressful things you'll ever do. We'll talk about job interviews right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Closed captioning for The Law Works is made possible by a grant from the Monongalia County Bar Association to support legal information and education for all West Virginians. The Law Works is made possible by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and legal system, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. By the generous support of Software Systems Incorporated, a West Virginia company established in 1975, providing high-end support services, programming, and consulting for county government AS400 mid-range computer systems, as well as PC-based systems. And by viewers like you.
What questions can you be asked in a job interview and which ones are prohibited? Are there things you can do to increase your chances of getting that job? My guests are Sandy Stewart Wagner and attorney David Morrison. David, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
It's been a while, I think, since you've been here.
A couple of years.
Always enjoy having you here. And Sandy, our viewers know you, but you've never been on this show before.
I have not. It's usually Pledge Drive with you and I, Dan.
Those are fun times. Well, we want to talk about job interviews today. What is the real issue in a job interview? Are you interviewing me? Am I interviewing you? What's going on there?
We're going both ways. The employer is looking to interview for success, and the employer wants to make sure that the person that is being hired will be successful in his or her role. Likewise, the employer wants the employee to be successful. So you're looking to hire for success. Who is going to fit the role the best?
Is that really true? Does the employer want the employee to be successful? Many employees feel like, no, we're just being used, we're being taken advantage of.
It's way too expensive. Employers are interested in making a profit generally, if it's in the private sector, even in the public sector. You're interested in success. And so it's very expensive to go through the interview hiring process. You're making an investment, so you want to hire the person that's going to work out the best for you.
Why is it expensive?
Well, you're using someone in your organization to do the review of the resumes and job applications. They're also going through the process of the interviews. You're paying that person to do that, so that is expensive. You bring the person in, you train them, and you go through a training process. Very few people know what they're doing when they first get there, in terms of at least your own policies and procedures. So they're going to go through a training process. All that costs money. It's expensive. So they want to make a smart investment.
Even if the person is coming from an essentially identical position somewhere else, you still have to train them. And there's a lot of training that is involved, even just in a lateral move.
Every employer's policies and procedures are different from the next. Even if they're doing the exact same job, the policies and procedures are different.
Sandy, you're a staffing specialist. I think your title is senior staffing specialist.
Supervisor.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean? What do you do?
Well, I work for Kelly Services, and we're a staffing company. And we hire people on temporary or temp to hire, or what's also considered direct hire positions. We have those three types of positions that we fill. So every day I talk to both ends of the spectrum, as David mentioned. I bring in individuals that are candidates for us to hire for a particular position, or maybe for a variety of types of positions. And I do a preliminary phone interview first, actually, and then if they meet the qualifications that we're looking for a particular skill set or for a particular customer, I bring them in for the interview. And we go through about a 2-hour process for everyone, Dan. We talk to them first and do an interview, make sure they understand what Kelly Services is about, find out exactly what they're looking for. And it's everything from their soft skills to hard skills to benefits they might be looking for, pay rates. and even where they want to work as far as geographic area. My office in particular handles all of North Central West Virginia, so it's a long process.
What are soft skills and hard skills?
Soft skills have to do with your communication abilities, your knowledge of how to deal with people. The hard skills are more along the lines of what softwares do you know? Do you have accounting software skills, or do you have accounting principles? Do you have computer programming or engineering? Those hard skills are the actual hands-on what you're doing, not just how you talk to someone or dealing over the phone with a person. Those are your soft skills.
In the old days, we used to say, do you know how to type? Do you know how to run a cash register? Or even, for my first job, a key making machine, because that's what I did when I was in college. Well, the applicant coming in for a job interview, and Sandy, it sounds as though that what you do is the first interview that David would think of the employer normally doing. Is that a fair statement?
That's a very fair statement. And as he mentioned, I'll add one other thing besides having to use the people to do the interviews and review the resumes. It's also the advertising. So if someone, for example, would come to Kelly Services, if they are looking to fill a position, we offer them a lot of benefits to do so, and that's to save the money from doing the preliminary interview, advertising, reviewing the resumes, and all of that. And it gives the applicant an opportunity to find out what all types of positions we have to offer. So we do handle that first interview.
So the applicant can, at a temporary service, I'm going to call it a temp service, that's not really a correct title anymore. It's the way it got started. An applicant comes to your service, they can really be applying for more than one job in one process. They come in and they tell you what their skills are, and you can identify the positions that you have listed that they may fit into.
Absolutely.
So David, your employers, in essence, would be outsourcing to an employment agency that Sandy runs. And I guess the state of West Virginia runs one of those too. Workforce West Virginia, people can come in and apply for jobs.
Very similar.
Except, and I have been told by people who work for the unemployment office, that they really don't have the higher level jobs available through their office that a service like Sandy's might have.
That's probably true.
What should the applicant expect? What are they going to be asked about? What are they not going to be asked about?
Well, the applicant should be prepared, first of all. If you're going in to apply for a position with a particular employer that's advertised, is going through the process of doing the interviews, you need to know what the employer is all about. You need to understand what the employer's business is. You need to understand what sort of thing you may be doing for that employer. You need to be prepared. And I do interviews for our law firm, for example. If the applicant is not prepared, he has one strike or she has one strike against him already. We expect them to understand our business. And there's so much information out there on the internet that there's really no excuse for not being prepared for an interview.
Well, that's how I find out about you. I go to the internet. In fact, I was looking for a bio to give to our PR people the other day about you, and I went on the internet, and there it was, C. David Morrison on your firm website. I found out where you went to school, what kind of awards you've won, not where you live, but at least where you work, what office you're in. So there's a lot of information out there, and it's truly about pretty much any company that's doing business these days.
Well, an employer will assume that if an applicant doesn't go to the trouble of trying to find out what that employer is about and doing his or her research, what's he or she going to do when she begins working for us?
Well, Sandy, your situation is a little bit different. People don't come to you saying, hi, I want a job with Steptoe & Johnson, which is a law firm that Dave's a partner in. They come to you with a more open or a broader list of expectations. How do you handle that?
Well, when they first contact our office, they might be responding to an ad we have in a local newspaper or a listing that we have on the internet. Kelly itself has what's called Kelly Career Network, and it folds over to Monster, and so we have listings pretty much across the internet and locally. But they'll call many times and say, I'm leaving this type of position. It might be that they've worked in the coal mine industry and they're looking for a laborer or light industrial type position. or they might have been, no offense, a legal secretary for a while, and they say, I want to get out of it. It's a stressful type of position.
I can't imagine that would be a stressful job.
I can't either.
So there are many reasons that they come to Kelly Services. And the first thing that we're going to do is find out a little bit more about what are you looking to do now? What are your pay requirements? And then, are you interested in a temporary position, or are you specifically looking for a temp to hire situation? Because we're not going to try to take someone, to paraphrase, like put a square peg in a round hole. We want to make sure that we fit the right person in the right job, because if we don't, we're not doing a good service to our customers, our business customers, or our employees. Kelly Services has the ideal that we've got two sets of customers. One is our employees, and one is our business customers. And if we don't treat either one of those right, we're not going to have a business. We have to make sure we put the right person in the right position. So it's a pretty in-depth interview that we go through, a lot of questions.
Okay, so I'm coming to whomever is going to be conducting this interview, whether it's you, Sandy, or David, or a member of your firm. And I come in, how do you expect to see me present myself?
Well, one thing that we want to make sure is that people know how to dress. When you come to an interview, if someone's looking for a laborer position, it doesn't mean show up in your work boots and your jeans and your torn t-shirt. You should always come at least business casual. A business attire is not always necessary. You don't have to come in a suit, but you should not have shorts or flip-flops or a tank top or anything along that line. Come so that when you present yourself, that first appearance is, this person is serious about looking for a job.
We're talking about job interviews. My guests are Sandy Stewart Wagner and attorney David Morrison. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. What's business casual?
Business casual would be a nice pair of dress slacks for a gentleman. Even some Dockers and chino type slacks are fine, and a shirt with a collar for a gentleman. A lady could be a skirt, nothing too far above the knee. It could be a pair of dress slacks. Open toe shoes, not so much, preferably a closed shoe, and then a blouse or a jacket and blouse, sometimes even a nice summer type top or winter sweater is appropriate. But definitely keep in mind, if someone is going to, for example, a law office, people should definitely go more on the professional attire. With our office, they're coming in for a variety of types of positions, so business casual is appropriate for us. But now if we then send one of our employees to a customer that's maybe looking for someone temp to hire, and they say, we want to do a preliminary interview, not just have you send in a temporary employee, because we will allow them to do that. If they're going to a law firm, we would definitely tell them, you need to dress in professional attire.
Is that what you expect when you see somebody come into your office?
Absolutely. I mean, most of the people in our firm are dressed professionally, both the support staff and the lawyers, so we would expect anybody coming in, if they're trying to make a favorable impression, to dress professionally.
Jacket and tie, business suit if you're a woman?
Yes, both.
Well, my English isn't so good, and I have trouble addressing or speaking and using good words. What should I do about that?
Well, I definitely think that the person needs to be aware of how they sound. Many times people just start talking and they don't realize they're using slang or inappropriate grammar. So I think they need to do some search on the internet. You can Google grammar or proper English. Google those types of things and just make sure that you know what you're saying. We actually have a grammar skill test that we will give our office clerical potential employees. And I would say that the passing rate is probably only about 50%.
At what level do you test? Is this grade school grammar, high school grammar, college grammar?
I'd say between high school and college, really everyday grammar. Things that you would use in business correspondence probably.
50. What are people failing to be able to do?
A lot of tenses, the tense of a word. I done gone. I hear that so much. Instead, I have, they will use I done this. It's pretty common everyday things. And I think that between that and the spelling evaluation that we give, spell check on computers has really spoiled a lot of people's abilities to spell. I mean, thank goodness they still have spelling bees, but it's just not there, Dan.
You know, spell check on a computer has improved my spelling because I of course, spell check everything. But when I find a word is misspelled, I specifically look to see why I misspelled it and what I should do. And my spelling has improved dramatically. It's taken decades, but by using spell check, it has improved dramatically. I suppose, David, you want people to be able to read and write.
Sure, and be very careful in your cover letters. Be careful on what you put down in your resume. There are typos. We see typos in resumes, typos on applications. And a typo could get by anybody, or a misspelling could get by anybody. Have somebody else look at it before you send it out. Have another set of eyes take a look at it, your spouse, your boyfriend or girlfriend, or aunt or uncle or something.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, because we see it all the time. I'll get a cover letter that has a misspelling of the word, of some common word in there, and you think, well, are they careful?
Proofreading. We also test on proofreading for our clerical applicants. And that's a big thing because so many computers now, if you type a word, it's going to assume. It's got that little program in there that it'll put in what it thinks you want it to say, and people just go on. And if they don't proofread, then, as David mentioned, you've got all kinds of typos.
I would bet you in your office you have autocorrect turned off. If you know what that is.
You know, Dan, you're talking to a Neanderthal on that sort of thing.
Well, let me explain that. Many word processing programs, we used to call them word processors, now they're just computers, but many programs like Microsoft Word or WordPerfect, other programs out there, will have a feature where if they anticipate what words you want to use, and they will correct your spelling for you and insert the word, and sometimes you want it to say Iceland, but it will suggest ice cream. And if you don't go back and find that and correct it, you're going to look very silly. So in those programs, you can in fact turn that feature off, and it's a really good idea in serious business writing to turn it off.
Well, I suspect then we have turned it off because ice cream has not come across yet.
We're talking about job interviews. My guests are Sandy Stewart Wagner and attorney David Morrison. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. David, what are the verboten subjects, the subjects in job interviews that the employer may not ask about, and I suspect the employee should not volunteer?
Mostly it's the protected questions about the protected categories. For example, we all know that you cannot discriminate, employers cannot discriminate on the basis of race, gender, national origin, age, religion, all those protected categories we've heard about, disability. So therefore you can't ask questions about it. If you, as an employer, ask questions about those subjects, then the presumption is that when you didn't hire that person, it's because they told you that they had a disability of some kind, or they said that they were married or not married, or whatever the protected category is. So you cannot ask those questions. The law is very, very clear on that.
What about things that are obvious? The employee comes in and only has one arm, or Sandy is in a wheelchair. She comes in a wheelchair applying for a job. Can I, as a prospective employer, ask the fellow with one arm or the lady in the wheelchair about that?
No. What you can do, it's almost a game of semantics, but under the ADA and under the state...
ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act.
I'm sorry, yes. The Americans with Disabilities Act and our State Human Rights Act, which is essentially adopted the ADA as part of its structure. What you can do is ask if the person can do the essential functions of your job with or without accommodations. You have to then describe the essential functions. Can you do that? If someone comes in without any arms and one of their jobs is to climb a pole, it may seem obvious that the person cannot do that, but there may be some orthopedic device, some accommodation that can be made so the person can perform that job. So all you can ask, even if it's obvious, is this is what's required of this job. Can you do it with or without some sort of accommodation? You can ask that question.
Do you have to ask that question?
You don't have to ask that question, no, but if you don't ask the question, I think the presumption may be that you didn't hire that person without arms because of that disability, just based on what you saw. So it's although you don't have to ask it as a matter of law, it's probably a pretty good idea to ask it.
You know, it makes it seem like there's a very popular program on television currently called The Voice, where the judges turn their backs literally to the applicant, the singer, and just listen to the voice. They don't look to see if you're 12 feet tall or in a wheelchair or have one arm or what color you are. They just listen to the voice. It sounds almost as if we ought to conduct job interviews like that too. Or sit in a dark room or sit in separate rooms and talk over the telephone or something like that, so that you're not inadvertently or allegedly prejudiced by something that is obvious.
That might not be a bad idea in certain interviews. Sometimes it's important, though, to see how well the person can converse. Can the person look at you in the eye and talk to you? That may be part of the job, and that's something you're evaluating when you're talking to the person. So, as I said the last time I came on here, it depends.
That has become a famous phrase on this program. It seems like lawyers always answer every question with the phrase, "It depends." Incidentally, there are no simple questions. There are no quick answers in the law. Everything depends.
That's right. But other questions like workers' comp history, you can't ask that. And the reason is that people have the right to file for workers' comp benefits, and employers cannot make decisions on the basis of whether someone has a workers' comp history. So you can't even ask the question.
But at the same time, if the job requires someone to be able to lift 40 pounds, if they are restricted by their physician to only lifting 20 pounds, you need to know that. But you have to go through all of the qualifications or all the requirements of the position to address that. And then what does the employee say? Well, I can only lift 20 pounds?
If the employee says I can only lift 20 pounds, then the next question would be, well, are you aware of any accommodations that would assist you in lifting 40 pounds?
Do you have an obligation as the employer to go out and see if there are accommodations that are available?
Not at the applicant process. Not at that stage, you don't.
Currently, and I think this is an issue that's going to come up increasingly in the future, people have things about themselves that are off-putting. Weight, for example. Tattoos, as another example. Can you decline to hire somebody solely because of their weight?
It depends. Typically, no. Obesity has been determined by many courts to be a disability under the Americans with Disabilities Act and under the Human Rights Act in West Virginia. So generally the answer to that question is no. There may be certain types of jobs, for example, a police officer that needs to be able to chase down a suspect. That person's weight may be an impediment to the ability to do that. And there are certain requirements to be a police officer. So there are jobs where being obese would prohibit you from doing the job itself. But the general answer is no.
Tattoos. Sandy, somebody comes into your office who've got tattoos up and down both arms and around their neck. What do you do?
Cannot discriminate, no. I mean, there are times that we have customers that it is written in their employee policy that a person cannot have visible tattoos. There are a lot of banks, for example, that is in their employee policy. So it might be that as part of the dress code, we impart that to the person if they're assigned to, for example, a banking facility. But in general, that's fine.
Can you discriminate on the basis of tattoos?
Sure. If you're in the private sector, now in the public sector you may get into a First Amendment issue, but in the private sector, if you have certain grooming standards and you have the right as an employer to project the reputation and project the image you want, if a person comes in tattooed from head to toe and that's not the image you want, you don't have to hire them on the basis of appearance.
I had a fellow suggest to me one time that he was going to a job interview and that he liked wristwatches and he wanted to wear a bright orange and black rubber wristwatch. It's a huge thing on his wrist. And I said, I don't think you want to do that. You don't want to distract from yourself with your wristwatch. And he said, well, I don't want to work for any company that would hold something like that against me.
That's his option.
That was my response is, okay, but don't be surprised if they don't hire you. Help them hire you. Don't detract from yourself by the way you dress, but the way you act. Come in with a positive attitude, but don't have an attitude.
Lots of employers have grooming standards that govern what you can wear, what you, facial hair, lots of things that are perfectly lawful. And you get into possible religious discrimination if someone is wearing required religious garb. So you have to work through those issues on possible accommodation. But by and large, employers have the right to project the image it wants to project.
There are lots of resources available on the internet that will help you get through a job interview, to help you anticipate job interviews. And we've got some links on the LawWorks webpage that you may want to check out also about how to survive the job interview. David Morrison, Sandy Stewart Wagner, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Dan.
Thank you also for being with us. On behalf of the LawWorks, I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening.
On the LawWorks website at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks programs, additional information about this show's topic, and video of this and recent shows. You can also find the LawWorks programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future The LawWorks show, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a DVD of this show for classroom use, send us email at thelawworks@comcast.net or visit us on Facebook.
The LawWorks is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the Mountain State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The LawWorks is made possible by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and legal system, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. By the generous support of Software Systems Incorporated, a West Virginia company established in 1975, providing high-end support services, programming, and consulting for county government AS400 mid-range computer systems, as well as PC-based systems. And by viewers like you.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.